This is the Rhodesia Broadcasting Corporation.
It's time for the real thing.
That's the way it is. With a bottle of Coke and the way it will stay. For the taste of your life, what the world wants today. Oh, yeah, that's the real thing. Coca-Cola is Coke.
The time is 6 o'clock. Here is the news read by Colin Ross. Rhodesians of all races have been told by the Minister of Health that they can be proud of what has been achieved in the past 80 years. The Minister of Development in Mashonaland West and Central says the government is completely united behind the Prime Minister. The decision by the South African government to integrate sport has been greeted with cautious pleasure. The security forces have issued a communique. Here is the text of the communique. Security Force Headquarters announced today that since the communique issued on September the 23rd, 10 terrorists and an African man running with a terrorist gang have been killed by security forces. Quantities of war materials have been seized. In an abortive attack on an unoccupied farmhouse in the operational area, terrorists have caused only superficial damage. Elsewhere, a European man who surprised a gang of terrorists in the act of destroying a Bowser and a tractor was fired at and sustained a foot wound. He has been evacuated to hospital. The body of an African man bayoneted to death by terrorists has been found by security forces. In other terrorist acts, terrorists have destroyed a building at a business center in a tribal trust land and have robbed a store and the occupants of a bus. That is the end of the communique. The Minister of Health, Mr. Cronje, says that during the years of its existence, Rhodesia has experienced a history of remarkable peace and calm. Speaking at the opening of Dombutombu Township Clinic at Marondelis, the Minister said this is to the great credit of all the peoples who live in this land. Over a period of little more than 80 years, black and white Rhodesians have built a land, developed it, and provided schools and facilities which are the envy of other nations. Mr. Cronje said all Rhodesians can be proud of this achievement because it could have been done only with the active cooperation of white and black. He pointed out that few countries anywhere in the world can boast the good and happy relationship between the races which is part and parcel of Rhodesia and its way of life. The Prime Minister, Mr. Ian Smith, will broadcast live to the nation on radio and television tonight. Mr. Smith will explain the settlement proposals outlined by the American Secretary of State, Dr. Kissinger, and whether the government of Rhodesia will accept or reject the proposals. The broadcast will be at 8 o'clock. The Minister of Development in Mashonaland West and Central, Senator Chief Chirao, says the prison service is one which demands the highest dedication from all ranks at all times. Speaking at a passing out parade at Chikarubi in Salisbury today, the minister demanded of the prison warders the highest standards of personal discipline and approach. He said that every member of the government is committed to the ideal held by the Prime Minister, Mr. Ian Smith, of maintaining high standards in Rhodesia. Senator Chief Chirao said the government, like the prison service, is multiracial and completely united behind the Prime Minister. This news comes to you from the RBC. A spokesman for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced today that Mr. Gideon Edward Becking, who was abducted by terrorists on May the 15th, was released yesterday by the government of Mozambique. He arrived in Salisbury by air from South Africa today and was met at the airport by members of his family and a representative of the Rhodesian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. A spokesman for the African Anti-Terrorist Movement, Mr. Samson Chibi, said today that the organization deplores the activities of people who have become de facto agents of foreign powers, namely Russia and China, who are purporting to represent the Rhodesian African community. The spokesman added that the movement regards Rhodesia as a living example of a community of blacks and whites living harmoniously together in a society which they have jointly built. Insofar as African nationalist leaders have indulged themselves in international canvassing for the destruction of the established and successful order in the country, they cannot in any way be considered as representative of the African people. The decision by the South African Minister of Sport, Dr. Koenhoff, to drop all racial segregation in sport at a national level has been greeted with cautious pleasure by sporting bodies and organisations. In Australia, the England cricket captain, Tony Greig, said today that South Africa must be allowed to show that it will stand by its new policy. Greig said South Africa should now be allowed to compete in all international sporting competitions. The New Zealand Maori sportsman, Tano Norton, said he thinks the presence of the All Blacks team in the Republic this year helped to convince the government of the worth of multinational sport. In the Republic, most sporting organisations have expressed pleasure over the decision and say they are now hoping to see South Africa once again compete against other countries at international sporting events. The American Secretary of State, Dr. Kissinger, will hold a meeting in New York next week with the leader of the Southwest African People's Organization, Sam Nujoma. Agence France-Presse, quoting diplomatic sources, says the two men will discuss a proposed constitutional conference on the future of Southwest Africa. The agency points out that neither man has made any mention of the constitutional conference in Windhoek, at which decisions on the future of the territory were made. Three Iraqi helicopters have bombed and strafed a Turkish border post, wounding 4 soldiers and a civilian. The attack, which is described by the Turkish government as totally without warning, occurred yesterday on the southeast border of Turkey. The post was established in 1974 to stop Kurdish rebels crossing from Turkey into Iraq to join the abortive revolt against the government in Baghdad. Now, to end the news, here are the main points again. The decision to integrate sport in South Africa has been greeted with cautious pleasure by sportsmen everywhere. The Minister of Development in Mashonaland West and Central, Senator Chief Chirao, says the government is completely united behind the Prime Minister, Mr. Ian Smith. Black and white Rhodesians have been congratulated by the Minister of Health, Mr. Cronje, for developing a country in which all can live. And that is the end of the news. The next news bulletin will be at 7:45.